About 7 American months ago, I went to the wonderful city of New York, visited 13 bookstores, and bought 13 books. One of them being this book right here, which is Catchpenny by Charlie Huston. Now I know what you're thinking, Chris, what's the difference between an American month and something like an English month? And truthfully, not that much, but the English took at least one of those months from Africa, and they're being real stingy about giving it back. Now every book on my bookshelf I have some sort of familiarity with, even if I haven't read the book yet. For example, Dune? Timothy Chalamet's in this. Atlas Shrugged, kinda racist. Alexander Hamilton, he cheated on his wife, but at least he didn't embezzle. However, the book that I know the absolute least about is Catchpenny. Now, the first time I bought it was in the Mysterious Bookshop in New York City, wonderful spot, and I got it purely off of this review by Stephen King on the front cover. It says, I absolutely loved it. Catchpenny is a brilliant book full of heart and the language is pitch perfect. If Elmore Leonard had ever written a fantasy novel, this would be it. Now, I've never heard of Elmore Leonard and I also have never read fantasy. So if we want to just take all that out, I'm reading this book because of that right there. I didn't even read the summary on the back when I first got this. It says, a thief who travels through mirrors in search of magical curiosities, a video game that threatens to spill out of the virtual world, a doomsday cult on a collision course with destiny, and a missing teenager at the center of it all. With the world on the brink of every kind of apocalypse, humanity needs a hero. What it gets is Sid Catchpenny. This isn't even a summary of what happens. This is just a list of things involved in a book. So that's what we're gonna do in today's video. We are going to be reading the book that I know the absolute least about compared to all the other books on my bookshelf. And then we're gonna see, is Sid Catchpenny really like that? Is Charlie Huston really like that? And most importantly, are my skills of judging a book by its cover really like that? Let's go. All right, y'all, real quick. I am 35 pages into this book. I just started chapter 3 of Catchpenny, and I already have stuff to talk about. I took notes. That's how you know this book surprised me. First and foremost, I thought this was going to be like young adult science fiction, right? We were gonna have like a hero or a heroine, like late teenager, something like that. No, Sid Catchpenny is like 40 years old. One, I don't think I've ever met anyone in the world named Sid. So by that logic, I've never met an adult man named Sid. I feel like at that point, you gotta switch it up to like Cedric or something like that. You're telling me you're in your 40s or 50s and your name is Sid? What are we doing? But the way they describe him is kind of cool, right? It's giving like a punk rock sort of vibe. Think of the punk rock Spider-Man from Into the Spider-Verse. That's like the image I have in my head, but imagine him like 40 and probably white. I'm not saying he is white. I'm saying probably. I dropped the book. We can't let that happen. There is also a magic system in this book, not something I was really expecting, but the way they explain the magic I thought was kind of interesting. Mojo is power, a path to getting things you want, a means of doing the impossible. But it's tricky using Mojo. There are rules to how it works, there are rules, and also there are no rules, because at brass tacks, we're talking about magic. Although I try not to use that overly loaded word. Rules and no rules. Mostly, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, so I keep it simple and just steal magic stuff for other people to use. I don't know if I like the explanation of a magical system to be like this, and I'm not even sure if I hate it that much either. And if that's the way that the magic in this book is going to be kind of discussed, is that it's majorly vibes based, I'm cool with that, I think. I think my biggest worry with having a magic system that's vibe-based is that something is going to happen at the end of the book that completely derails or that goes against everything we've learned about the magic system so far in order to say like, oh, the day is saved because there's this thing that the magic can do that we just found out about. Usually I like to give a book about 100 pages before I decide if I'm going to DNF it or anything like that. I'm definitely not feeling DNF in Catchpenny so far. I just think we're setting some stuff up. Again, it's only been 30 pages, so I'm not too stressed about it. Also, the text is regular sized, and I like that. I like a regular text sized book because in Overstory, in 100 Years of Solitude, minuscule text. But I'm hoping to read a little bit today, and then hopefully I can update y'all when I hit that like 100 to 200 page mark. I'll catch y'all soon. What do y'all think of my little book displayer? I realized that I didn't do a great job of describing what was happening in the book. So we're going to do that now. We are following our boy Sid Catchpenny. And while I say our boy, he is actually a middle-aged kind of punk rock looking dude. And he's not a great dude at that. Our man Sid Catchpenny is a thief. And what he steals are magical items that are kind of infused with this very potent magic called mojo. Technically, a place, a situation, a thing can have or can be infused with a ton of mojo. And this energy, this magic, you can use to do a bunch of things. Mirrors are very potent magical items in this book as well, to the point where our main character uses mojo and a mirror to essentially teleport through this like weird interdimensional space from one mirror on one side of LA to another mirror on another side of LA. Mojo can also be used to summon what this book calls mannequins, which are like the things you see in stores, but they are these sentient clone looking things that can help whoever summons them like do their bidding. If it sounds like this book is difficult to explain, it's because it is. There's a lot of stuff going on. Like, we also find out that Sid Catchpenny was also a very good singer, but then his girlfriend slash wife gets murdered, and then he sells his voice to this lady who is like a very powerful mojo collector and mojo user. And so now he's like it's this whole thing. He is currently by himself, but he used to do this in like a tag team duo situation with a friend of his named Francois. Eventually, Francois says, hey, I got this lady named Iva. She has lost her daughter and I need your help finding her. I am on page 148 out of 400. And I'll be very honest with you, when I started reading this book, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. And truthfully, I'm still not sure if I like it. It is also still hard to believe that our main character, I don't think they've said an age yet, is like 40s or 50s. Some of the stuff that our main character says makes him sound like he's late teenager. I'm not even talking like 18, 19. I'm talking about like 14, 15. But I feel like there are points in the writing where it has to take a step back because the author has to remind us that our main character is in his 40s or in his 50s. Like, there's this whole conversation in a car where they are going to this address that they found to see if they can find this missing girl, and Sid doesn't have a phone, and Francois is like, I only have a flip phone. If we had technology, we could use it. And it's just like them being like older adults for a weird reason. And while I think the setting of this story and the world that's being created is really interesting, I don't really love any of our characters so far. But I have read 148 pages in about 24 hours. So there's something about this book that is keeping me interested and keeping me entertained. I just don't know if I've discovered kind of what every plot line and what every side story is kind of leading to so far. Again, I'm not even halfway through the book, so I can't really complain about that, but it feels like there's a lot of stuff being set up and there's a lot of information, and I don't know if there's like a clear direction to where all that stuff is going. All right, y'all, I apologize if the framing has changed. I've had so many problems with this exact camera. It's really frustrating, but the show must go on. I'm rereading the little bit on the back here, and the video game that threatens to spill out of the virtual world has not been mentioned at all yet, and the Doomsday Cult on a collision course with Destiny has been mentioned, but we haven't gone into detail about that at all. So we still have a lot of book to go, even though we still are about 40% of the way through. Now I'm gonna see how many pages I can read before I fall asleep. Let's go.
One day later.
All right, y'all, so I made a pretty decent dent into this book. We don't have that much left. I think I read like a little more than 100 pages last night before I went to bed. And while I think the book is still entertaining, I don't think it is without issues. I know I've said this a few times, but I really think the strength in this book is the world and the magic system that it has established so far, 254 pages in. But I feel like this book would just benefit from either having less things to worry about or having more space to discuss all the things that it wants to discuss. So not only do we have Sid Catchpenny, who is depressed, who has had suicidal thoughts, who has self-harmed since the death of his wife, and I haven't talked about it up until this point because I wanted to avoid spoilers, but I feel like for a video that the whole point is I have not heard anyone talk about this book, I feel like we're gonna delve into spoilers a little more than we already have, so keep that in mind. We know who killed his wife. The killer of his wife was a clone kind of mannequin version
of himself. After his wife passes away, he's like, I'm never gonna sing again, so I'm going to give my voice up to this magical lady in exchange for having a lot of mojo and having a lot of magical powers himself. He also sells off physically his heart to like a mojo infused item collector because he's so like done in with grief and wants revenge and wants more power to try and find this fake mannequin version of himself that may or may not have killed his wife. And we haven't even gotten to the whole story of this book, which is the missing girl, the woman he is trying to help Francois find. And there will be parts in the book where you think the book is going to get a little bit more in depth on Sid's like emotional history and all the things he went through after his wife's passing. But nope, he has to go do something else. Oh, he gets a clue that may or may not help him find this missing girl that we've spent like 200 pages trying to find. Oh no, but now he has to worry about getting his heart back because the person that is in control of it is now fiddling with it. And all of this stuff is cool, right? Separately, all of these ideas are cool, right? Being able to use mirrors as an incredibly powerful magical object, mojo as a system is very interesting. This missing girl that might end up being the key to like stopping or having the end of the universe happen. All of this stuff is really cool and really interesting. I just feel like it's a lot to force into this book. It's entertaining. It's an entertaining book. Is it a perfect book? Absolutely not. And that's what's frustrating because I feel like there's so much good stuff here. I think maybe with like another round of editing or maybe the author having like physically more pages to write some stuff out, I think that would have done this book a hell of a ton of favors. And I don't know if I've said this yet, I love the cover. I think this is a dope cover. This is a really cool cover for a book. And it's what caught my eye on it besides the Stephen King blurb on the front. This has all of the ingredients to be a good book. It just needed like a bigger plate, you know? But I think that's going to be it. It is currently 1:30 p.m. on Sunday. And you guys are going to see this at 10 a.m. on Monday. So your boys got some reading and some editing to do.
Many hours later.
All right, y'all, it is currently 9:03 p.m. This video is going up in a little less than 13 hours, and I just finished reading Catch Penny by Charlie Huston. Let's talk about it. I really wanted to like this book more, man. I really wanted to like this book more. I've said this since the very beginning, but I think what this book has going for it so well is not just the world building with the whole magic system that was introduced very early on, that was only expanded upon as we got on through the book, but also in a weird way the characters, right? Because I had some issues with the way that Huston wrote his characters where it feels like characters like switch sides too quickly, or there was really like weird messaging like, yes, our main character Sidney Catchpenny is a 40 to 50-year-old dude, that's fine, whatever, but then he was making jokes that like a 14-year-old would make, and not even satirically, like just stuff that made me question how old our main character was. You have our main character, Sid Catchpenny, a magical thief who slips through mirrors in order to steal magical items. That's rad. You have this lady who's essentially like an agent in Hollywood who has these crazy parties, who signs these musical artists in order to feed off their mojo, to feed off their magical energy for herself. I guess it's like the character archetypes, and that really just goes with what I've been saying this whole video, that there's a lot of good stuff in this book, and I wished I liked it more. It just wasn't all there. I believe it said in the beginning that Charlie Huston has written other novels. Yeah, The Mystic Arts of Erasing All Signs of Death, which I think I've heard of, Sleepless, The Shotgun Rule, and the Henry Thompson trilogy. I'd be very interested in reading something else that Huston has written, because I feel like, at least from this book, he's an idea guy. And let me tell you, the ideas in here are awesome. Like in the book, one of the things they mention is that like you can't get mojo from the internet. You have to get it from real items or real experiences or real people. And then a few chapters later, you find someone who can get mojo from the internet. You have these mannequins that you can get these copies of people from mirrors, and the whole thing is that they're copies of people, but they can't use mojo. And then 6 chapters later, you find someone who is able to infuse mannequins with mojo. And that was set up earlier, right? Like, I can't be mad at Huston for this one, because he says mojo has rules and also doesn't have rules. It also felt like this book was going for like a plot twist ending. A bunch of stuff happened in the last like 5 or 6 chapters, and reading it, I was like, wow, this is really cool. This is really interesting. But then you realize that the only good parts, or let me rephrase that, the only cool parts of the book were the very beginning when you didn't know a lot of stuff, and the very end where everything was coming together. A lot of the in-between was kind of just eh. I'm actually going to look up the Goodreads for this book because I specifically, when I thought of the idea for this video, I specifically wanted to be in the blind as much about it as possible. So I don't know like the genre technically. I bought it in like a mystery crime thriller bookstore, so there's that. But I don't know if it has like any subgenres. I don't know how people feel about the ending and stuff like that. This book has a 3.76, at least on Fable. I'm on Fable right now, and that seems kind of high for me. I'm gonna look at some of these reviews really quick. Shout out Eric. I'm actually gonna like your review because he actually goes on to say the premise is cool, the characters are cool, and the story itself is cool. It's a little too long, honestly, and I feel like there are multiple chunks of story in this book that were not super necessary. That's one of the things I also wanted to mention. Looking at the blurb on the back specifically, a thief who travels through the mirrors in search of magical curiosities. Rad, cool, integral to the book. A video game that threatens to spill out of the virtual world. Not necessary to this book at all. You could cut out that entire side plot and 90% of this book would be fine. Let's keep going. A doomsday call on a collision course with destiny. Technically, you could get, that's the other 10%. 90% of the book would be fine. If you take out a doomsday call on a collision course, you would be perfectly okay with that. A missing teenager at the center of it all. If you just had a thief who travels through mirrors in search of magical curiosities and a missing teenager at the center of it all, that is a perfect book. The characters were not a likable group for me. The main character, Sid, was the least. It's hard to read a book for me when I can't find anyone to cheer for. There were a few times, and this is what I mentioned earlier in this video, there were a few times that the character spoke like whiny preteens, which was really off from how they were written through the book. If I had to attach a rating to this book, and I still think that the 3.76 I mentioned earlier is high for this, unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to go with like 2 stars. There was a lot that I liked about this book, and obviously there was something that kept me reading until the end, but I feel like the negatives just outweigh the pros in the situation. But that's gonna be it for today's video, y'all. I hope you enjoyed me reading this book that I haven't heard anyone else talk about on the internet, on Goodreads, or anything like that before. Make sure y'all like, comment, and subscribe, all that good business. What's the last book that y'all got that was completely on a whim? You hadn't heard anybody talk about it and you just took a chance on it. Was it a good experience? Was it a bad experience? Let me know in the comments down below. If you've made it this far into the video, here's a spoiler for next week. Presented without comment. Do something that makes you happy. Do something that makes you some money. I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.